All right, what's up, guys? It's Kyle with another episode of Unlocking Your Inner Strength. Got a very special guest here, Jake Thomas from Life Like Jake. So, Jake, thanks for being with me, bro.
Thanks so much for having me today, Panda Man.
Yeah, man, it's good, guys, because we owner and Ocon, the Turks, the Turkish brothers. We're working with both of us, and they've told me a lot about Jake. So I've been really looking forward to speaking with them. And then Jake said this morning, "Hey, let's just make it a podcast." I was like, "Perfect, man. I love to leverage time, so that's a good thing." So, Jake, why don't we start out by just kind of giving people where you're from, like where you're at right now. We were just talking about where you're going, and then we'll just go based off of that. I'll dive into some questions.
Yeah, man. And exactly like you said, dude, the Turks said, man, you and Panda Man, y'all got to get together. Y'all got to get together. And so finally, our paths are able to come to and, make the time to do it. So right on to the Turks. I'm originally from New Orleans, grew up all over the place, though, moved around a bunch as a kid once I was out of the house at 18 through the military, and most recently was living in Miami. But currently, I'm sitting in South Texas, getting ready to make my way back to Mexico. My mother's from Mexico. A lot of my family still lives there, and I've lived there and worked there in the past for several years and moved back to the States in 2020, and now finally able to get back down there this year. I should be there hopefully second week of June, and I'm freaking stoked, man.
That's great. Yeah, the guys were telling me you're kind of not necessarily, maybe I have it wrong, but living like off grid or kind of living just within age. Tell us a little bit about the setup down there.
Yeah, so my uncle, my godfather, has been designing and manufacturing furniture, Southwestern style, hacienda, Spanish colonial. Pretty much what you're seeing me sitting in right now. This is one of our rooms that's dressed in all of his stuff. He's been doing that for almost 30 years now, all out of Mexico. Before that, he was a bodyguard and taught a lot of things to the Mexican army and the Guatemalan armies. He's a cool dude, somebody I really look up to. But for the last 30 years, he's been designing, manufacturing this handmade, amazing furniture. And he does so via a small town in the state of Michoacan. So if you look at the country of Mexico, you've got the state of Mexico, where Mexico City is, kind of like right smack in the middle. And then to the west of that, you have Michoacan. And to the west of that, you have Jalisco, which Jalisco would have Guadalajara, which most people would know is the next biggest city in the country. So Michoacan sits between the two states of Mexico and Jalisco. And our town is called Pátzcuaro, Patzcuaro. So Pátzcuaro, if you were to say it, Pátzcuaro, like that. And it's an old colonial city, like 500 years old. It's about almost 3,000 meters of elevation, so close to 7,000 feet. And they're known for their woodworking. They're known for their copper work. They're known for their detail, their handcrafted kind of ornate detailing of wood more than anything, and just iron and copper craftsmanship. So it's a remote place, but it's a magical place. It's called a Puebla Mágica, a small little town, a magic town. And yeah, man, it's pretty remote. The air is clean, but the people are pure, and the quality of life is amazing. And that's, a place that I fell in love with years ago when I first visited, and have kept coming back to kind of draw from the well of purity that it really has.
That's awesome, man. I'm a little envious, man. That sounds like a dream.
It's pretty surreal, dude. It's like it's up in the mountains. Like I said, it is definitely remote, and there are, first world things that don't necessarily exist there. Like how clear this call will be from there is who's to say, because our bandwidth can lag a little bit sometimes. But again, the give and take of what you get in the form of quality of life, just naturally, as the status quo is so different, and you're not exposed to all the other types of materialism, marketing, intense kind of need for processing of information. Like when I was living in New York City, for example, and I know you live up there, so you know what I'm talking about. I actually moved to New York, to Manhattan, from Pátzcuaro when I first moved to the city. So that was a huge change, to go from our tiny little mountain town to fucking Manhattan was crazy. And fun fact about Michoacan is actually the world's largest exporter of avocados. All right. So everybody listening, fun fact of the day, 1/3 or 33% of the world's avocados come from our little state of Michoacan.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome, man. So I know you're kind of a free thinker from what I've seen, man, which I love. That's the way I am too.
Yep.
So with the move down there and all that, that's just another part in your path. But let's talk about like when did you really get into fitness? And then I want to talk about your approach to fitness. I know you're into fasting. The guy said, I know you've competed at a high level. You've run marathons. So I want to really dive into that and then get into the mindset. So when did you like get hooked by fitness, and then talk about your philosophy with fitness, how that's evolved and where it's at now?
Honestly, dude, it started. I played all the sports as a kid. Soccer was my main one. Track was my main one. I ran track in college, but it was in the military because it became a need more than just like a hobby or a passion. Even like sports are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm passionate, and of course, athletes are extremely passionate. But it became utilitarian, meaning like, you're bigger than I am. And it's like, if I got to pull Kyle Newell out of this tank or out of something or over a wall, like I need to be able to do that. I need to be able to pull myself over first, let alone before I can think about doing it for this other guy or these other guys around me. So I was always a skinny, gangly kid growing up. Like I was always really thin. And when I realized like I needed more strength to serve myself so I could serve other people, essentially, that's when it really clicked for me. So it became more than a passion or a hobby. It became literally a need, and it was encouraged. Like you're in the Marines. It's like, yeah, dude, pump steel and fucking be strong and, eat freaking ripped fuel and hydroxycut back in the day, right? Oh, yeah. Like everybody did. And that was part of the culture. So if anything, I realized that was like, okay, I can leverage these two things of my need, but at the same time, the culture is encouraging it, accepting it, promoting you based upon it, essentially, because obviously your physical fitness is part of your proficiency and conduct marks that you earn. So like the more physically fit you are, the more likely you are to be promoted and respected within the ranks. So that's really where it started, man. And then from there, it just snowballed more and more as I started to explore, what else can I do? Running track in undergrad at a later age in life, and then competing in physique with the WNBF, and then getting into everything else now has been that like amalgamation of all that.
Well, how long were you in the Marines for?
4 years, 2003 to 2007.
Okay, 2003 to 2007. So it started as a need. And then when you came out, Jake, of the Marines, was fitness where you went to first as far as like a career path?
No, good question. I was, it was like this. Or rather, it was a nice steady climb and then a real steep drop. I got into some trouble while I was in the Marine Corps. Nothing too crazy. I still had received my honorable discharge, and all that was hunky dory. But I had my heart broken about something that had happened within the ranks, and it put a bad taste in my mouth because originally I was going to stay for life, man. I'd found the brotherhood I was looking for. I'd found the home I didn't have back home. I found the emotional support and connection and belief and passion to something that I didn't have back home, or that I knew was missing and I was looking for. And once I found it, I was like, man, this is it. But something happened that took that away from me and really put me in a downward spiral in early 2006. And I kind of started to recover from it. But when I was getting out in 2007, I was already well on my way into the bottle. And as I got out into other things pretty quickly too.
Okay. So when did you circle back to saying, hey, you know what? I want to be a coach? Like, was it just after you started competing? Like, when did you start competing?
2016.
Okay.
So it was almost 10 years after I got out, right? So like I had this roller coaster of being in shape, being out of shape, being in shape, out of shape, like many people do, right? The balancing of diets and lifestyles, or not wanting to commit fully to your health, or still wanting to kind of keep a toe in the water of like, I still want to party and do hood rat shit with my friends, but at the same time look cool or look good and all that. And the more I kept doing that, the more it just didn't work, because you can only do that for so long. I know you know that, right? From doing the dance with gaining weight, losing weight, getting comp ready and shredding and bulking and all that. I just didn't have the heart for it, man. Like I started to lose the heart for rather the partying and everything else, because it was taking from me so much more and so much more obviously, that I knew that I was only getting from these other things, from the good parts. So the more I kept doing that, the less and less I was doing the other things, because it was just like, look, man, you kind of have to make a decision here of, you're either going to be this person, hang out with these people, continue doing these things, and you know where that's gotten you. You have this list of, feelings, failures, fuck ups, even, close calls with trouble, the law. You know where that's gotten you. Whereas this one, you know how it makes you feel, and it only makes you feel good. It's only brought you into better circles with higher caliber people, higher quality of people, to which it continues to do that, So like I saw kind of this revelation, or had this revelation of, Jake, if you do this, you will be happy, you'll be successful, you'll be healthy, all these things that I talk about, like being happy, healthy, and wealthy. And I saw this as like a moat or a gauntlet. And I was like, oh God, don't tell me that's what I have to do. Or like, that's what I have to walk through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's right here. It was being dangled. It's like, it's right here. Your health, your happiness, and your wealth is right here, Jake. All you got to do is believe in it and in yourself and stay healthy. That's it. So what does that mean? That means don't hang out with these people. Don't do those things. Don't give to things that aren't going to give back to you in the form of environments, places, time, things, the consumption of, whether it's in my eyes, my ears, my mouth, my nose, whatever. Only put forth what's going to give back. And that's not because I'm looking for it, but it's like that's how that karmic kind of wager works, right? You're either going to get like karmic credit or karmic debt. Like if you keep giving into the debt pool, like you're going to keep getting debt back. But if you give into that positive debit pool, it's going to give it to you back, because that's, law of compensation, law of attraction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the more I started to do that, or continue to do that, the better I felt. And then the more people started to kind of come to me. So to that law of attraction thing, in the sense that, hey man, I'm feeling this way. Can you tell me about this? Or like, hey man, da 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 da. And then I started to realize, like, oh my God, like, why are people talking to me about this? Why are they asking me? Like, who am I? I'm not an authority. And that's how it all started, just from these little queries of people all over the world, from immediate spheres of influence through friends and family, and then through extended networks, through either colleagues, past friends, acquaintances, people I'd met through travel that kind of either kept up with me online or just through the grapevine of communication. And then that kind of built my, like, hey man, stop thinking this is what you need to do, because the demand is literally right here telling you, like, this is who you are.
Yeah, right.
And all you need to do is be who you are,
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a thing that I think, like you said, man, you see in that path and the gauntlet that it's right there. And a lot of people, whatever their path is, they don't want to give up, the comforts, whatever it is that, whether it's alcohol or whatever it is, but I give you a lot of credit for that, man. The self-awareness, is to me the key for everything, man. You seem like you're very self-aware with, okay, this is what you got to do, and you do it, and you're doing it to serve others. So then you started doing that, and it seems like a similar path where friends and family would ask me for advice. So how did you take that, right, and now start turning it into a business and becoming a coach?
With a lot of resistance, to put it bluntly. Meaning, I started off working in corporate compliance for a very reputable, iconic, like, fashion brand in New York, and thought that's what I wanted in life: the clothes, the lifestyle, like just that aura. I thought that was me. I thought that's what I went to school for. That, X plus Y equals this: career, retirement package, all that stuff. And it wasn't bringing it home to me, like in my heart. And it wasn't the best use of my skill set either. And I realized that very quickly when I got there my first day, and they're like, okay, here's your terminal. And I was like, oof, me being in this little space is not good. And auditing stuff all day and binary bits of information. Yeah. So that was one. And then I went into some other career paths, real estate in New York, real estate in Miami. And it's great. I loved working with people, providing service, kind of was still the underlying MO. Even at the fashion brand, I was working in global human compliance. So looking out for the best interests of the companies or the corporations apparel workers all over around the world. So ages, wages, hours, working conditions, and occupational health and safety. So still looking out for the interests and needs of others, but just doing it from a medium that I was not good with, and it was not good for me. Real estate kind of took that a little bit better because it became more about me and how I can interact one-on-one with people and how I can affect and influence the situations with my energy, sometimes even my physicality. Like in New York, for example, maybe the difference between a deal between you and I, Kyle, is if I can get there across town faster than you can. Well, if you're on the subway or if you're taking a car even, and I'm a city bike rider, which I was, and I've been for years, I was doing like thousands of miles a year in Manhattan on the city bike. I was one of the top 1% of riders in New York City for several years. And I love City Bike for that. I'm not paid by them. I love what they do and I love what they have because it helped me create a competitive advantage in my business. So that was a cool leg up to be able to say like, hey, this is much more of a use of my skill set. But I was still not maximizing all of it because the demand was still heavier, or rather the power was still much more in the hands of the clients, and their ability to make me expendable was still totally at their leisure and luxury. Whereas I have all these other people that are hitting me up in direct messages on Instagram or on Facebook or WhatsApp or calls or texts on the phone. Hey man, can you help me with this? What do you know about that? My mindset, my depression, my wife, my anxiety, obviously all the fitness and nutrition stuff. And I'm thinking like, wow, this is weird. Like I'm wanting this, but something over here is telling me to do this. And then probably 3 years ago, I was in a meeting with an all hands on deck meeting, and pretty much all my workers or coworkers were complaining about, I can't generate leads. I don't know where to get clients, And I'm just sitting there with an inbox full of messages from people, like 20 plus messages about coaching stuff. And by that, again, the list I just gave, nutrition, mindset, depression, anxiety, this and that, trying to attract a new mate, trying to get promoted at work. But literally like, hey man, can you help me? And here I am with all these other people in this room and they're all complaining. And I'm just like, dude, you're in the wrong place. You're trying to be in here, but you belong elsewhere. And those people are telling you like, hey, you have something we see value in and we would love for you to share it with us. And that's when I was like, oh man, eureka.
And that's when you went all in.
Yeah. Like I'd already been dosing the program, so to speak, since like 2017 to friends and family. This person over there, some of my old boys from the Marine Corps, some people that I'd met through travel over the years. And that's how I built it before I launched it. So I'd been testing and doing a lot of R&D behind the scenes for years. And some of these people didn't even know that, but I was all this time building it. And then I didn't officially launch full scale until last year. Like I started to do it in 2020. I built up my whole website and then I pulled it back down again because I was like, no, I'm not really ready to go. And And then it wasn't until last year that I finally said, all right, all hands on deck, push all the numbers. Let's do it, Jake. Not like, I don't need to wait for anything else. I don't need anybody else's permission. It's just all you have to do is be healthy and believe. Again, that same cadence. And I was finally like, okay,
yeah,
burn the ships. Let's go.
Great, man. It's inspiring. So with your approach too, with fitness, let's talk about that. Like, tell us about your philosophy with nutrition, eating, fasting, and then we'll go into the training from there.
Oh man, the good stuff. Yeah, I got hit up when I was living in New York. I was shooting a video with a buddy of mine at a gym, a very sceney gym there some years back. And this guy was like, dude, you should think about fitness modeling. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool, but I don't have an agent or anything like that. And he's like, well, I do. I was like, oh, well, that's cool. well, here, let me take some pictures of you right here, and we'll send them to him and see what he says. And sure enough, like 2 seconds later, he's like, dude, bring that guy in here as soon as y'all finish the video. And then I was like, well, that's cool. And my father was actually with me at the time, and he's like, this is crazy, right? I was like, I know. And so we finished the video. We went to the guys, the agency's office, and we're sitting there and started talking about contracts and all that stuff. And like, yeah, we'll, put you up for 3 years and and, get you into these books and magazines and catalogs and videos. And my dad's like kicking me under the table. He's like, I'm like, I know, it's crazy, man. I don't know what to do or believe, And right after that is when a friend of mine at in another workout class, again, like kind of the beauty of these classes, especially in New York, they're so cliquey, right? And you kind of have that same community style of atmosphere that you'd find at a nightclub or at a bar, which is what these things are now. Hello, this is the healthy version of that kind of community and interaction. Is you go to a workout class to meet chicks. You go to a workout class to meet guys. You go to a workout class to meet people, to do business deals, to feel good, because now it's about truth and actual, like, real feeling, honest feeling, as opposed to, I was wasted and like, oh man, we fell in love. You have no idea. Whereas these things are real. And at one of those classes, a friend of mine was like, God, you should compete in bodybuilding. I was like, man, it's not really my thing, blah, 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 blah. And a friend of hers was prepping for a show or about to, and she's like, yeah, you guys could work together. And I was like, all right, sure, whatever. How hard can it be? And that was how that started. And, the journey went pretty much from there, and did that for a few years in physique. Had a blast doing it, learned a lot, failed a lot, struggled a lot, but certainly gave me a great glimpse into myself and understandings of for sure nutrition and training and volume and progressive overload and how not to do a lot of things. But that's how it all kicked off. Yeah.
That's how it kicked off. So for you yourself, right? Because I think it stems from that. What is it like nowadays? What is your approach as far as your training and then how you eat?
Yeah. So throughout my career of competing, I started off my first show just going standard kind of bro diet, right? That's what I knew. It's what I kind of grew up on. Even in the military, I was just doing my gram per pound of body weight and protein before I knew anything about macros. That was at least the only, metric I knew, because at the time, before the internet even, all we had was like Muscle and Fitness, the magazines, right? Yeah. To kind of like look through, read about these bodybuilders, what they were doing, like, and then every month there was a new product or a new article about like, oh, this is the key, this is what you're missing. And so like I literally had pages cut out from tons of different magazines, kind of piecing together what I thought to be the ideal plan for me. I took a little bit from Branch Warren. I took a little bit from Phil Heath. I took a little bit from, Gunther Schlierkamp. I love that dude. Took some from Kai Green, like all these iconic legends, obviously Arnold and his crew for sure. I had the Arnoldopedia, first coffee table book ever, right? Like everybody else, like now I've got the Tom Ford and the Chanel book, but it's like the Arnold book. And my ex-girlfriend used to hate that at our apartment because we'd have all the cool fashion books, and then I have the Arnold encyclopedia. But that's how it started, right? It was old school. Like we had to do that. And then as the internet started to unfold, more and more information was there, and I was able to piece together. But it started off just for me, simple. I did nothing. I had no understanding of macros, just a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Eat lean meats, stay away from red meat for the most part, eat a lot of fish and chicken breasts, rice and vegetables, broccoli. And then when I got into competing, learning about macros, oh my God, this is so cool. My first set of macros was based on that same bro dieting style of high protein, moderate to high carbohydrates, and super low fats. So like for me, I remember to this day, like my first set of macros for the first show prep was like 200 grams of protein, 200 grams of carbs, and like 60 grams of fat, right? That was my starting set, which I was like, cool. Like I'm a machine. This is my computer program. Run with it. So I did that for the first one, did really well. And then for the second one, I was like, let me see how much I can play with this or play within this. And I did it if it fits your macro style, right? So I was eating all kind of stuff, junk mostly, just so that I could, if it fit my macros, right? And then just realized that I can drink, either quarts of egg whites or just pure or clear bottles of Isopure to get the protein, but I can source all the other macros from all the other junk and just put them together, right? So that if it fits your macros. And then I did another one, bro style. And then, because I was dating a girl that was a vegan, I started to dabble into veganism, right? And about a couple of months into that, because it made the household much more civil to just go along with it. And I was also curious. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Sure, why not? I like this food. This tastes good, blah, 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 blah. And then I started to look into vegan bodybuilding. Who does this? Are there a lot of people? And it was really, really tiny, man. There was not a lot of guys doing it. The ones that were all clearly enhanced. And I was competing in the WNBF, the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation, right? And so there was nobody else doing it there. And I was like, oh, man, I got to do this. And people are like, no, you can't. I love that word. You're not going to do well. You won't place, da, 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 da. And I was like, all right, well, now I have to do it almost out of spite. So I did do that for a couple of shows, actually, and one of which was my world title shot, and ended up placing third overall in physique as a vegan. And people were like blown away by that. And I was like, I don't see what the big deal is. It's just, it's macros or macros. It doesn't really matter, blah, 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 blah. Saying that now, of course they do. And there were a lot of other things that kind of came out from that. But I did that strictly out of spite because people said I couldn't do it. Ironically enough, just a few months after, so this was in November of 2019, just a few months after that, in June of 2020, a friend of mine, one of my old roommate from the Marine Corps, best friend in the world, he was like, hey, man, have you heard about this carnivore diet? And I was like, what? Like, yeah, keto, I've heard of it. I've done it. Yeah. No, it's carnivore. I'm like, yeah, dude, keto, I get it. He's like, no, just meat. I'm like, yeah, keto, I get it. And he's like, bro, just look up this, read this, watch this, da, 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 da. And I'm like, this guy's not healthy that's telling me this. If anything, he's the polar opposite of health. Drug issues, alcohol, totally overweight, all this stuff. My best friend, but in my mind, I still have the medal around my neck from the world championship. And I'm like, who the fuck are you to tell me about health? Like, I'm the one with the trophy, dog, So I had a little bit of ego going there. But finally, I was like, all right, I trust this guy with my life. I'll bite. And so I started looking into that. And there started the cavern that I'm still in now with animal-based carnivore and lion. And people ask me about, well, what's your opinion? Where do you stand? What do you think? Like, are you a nutritionist? Are you a coach? Kyle, I think more than anything, and I think you could agree with this, we are scientists.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We are scientists. And the job of a true scientist is not to try to beat our chests and to say, this is proof, this is law. No. Our job as scientists is to constantly try and disprove our hypotheses by testing them over and over and over. Another one. And here I am 3 years later, and I cannot disprove this one. So that's why I keep going back to it. I keep going to the drawing board. I keep going further and further into this, exploratory phase of my life. So by using myself as an N of one with all these different diets, and when I was coaching clients in New York for nutrition and personal training, I was able to empathize with them, right? To be able to say, man, I've been paleo, I've done keto, Whole30. I've been a vegan for over a year, 14 months. I've done standard American, obviously, for most of my life. I've bro dieted for multiple shows. So like I had all these data samples to be able to, again, better understand the people I was serving. Because it's one thing when someone's like, yeah, I tried that diet. I'm like, well, how long? It's like, well, it's like 2 weeks. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Or it made me feel this way. Or, man, I really don't like the carnivore diet because I got sick. I'm like, how long did you do it for? A week. I'm like, no, I've done all the diets that I've put myself through to say I've tried that diet for a minimum of a year.
Yeah.
Right. And like right now, which I don't know if I'm going to go for it a year, but at least it's going to be 100 days. I'm on day number 85 out of 100 of the lion diet. So strictly red meat from the ruminant animals. So just the polygastrics, right? So cow, bison, sheep, and goat, salt and water. So today is day 85 of 100 of that. And that's where I'm I'm currently at. And like I said, I'm, pulling my hair out with enlightenment, realization, frustration, because it takes so much of what we thought to be dogma about dietetics, nutritional science, human physiology, microbiology, organic chemistry, stuff that was supposed to be sure, that I've gone through, and I know you have too, through fasting, in the similar sense. And then combining this with fasting, I'm just like, dude, everything I thought, the world being round, it's like, maybe it's not round, maybe it's not flat, maybe it's somehow malleable,
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at right now, brother.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Like you said, a scientist and I always say the direct knowledge, man. That's where it's at. Doing it yourself for a long time, and then you researched it, and you combine those two things, man, and you find the truth. You find the truth, man. Talk about with that, like what do you got on the competitive scene coming up? As far as I know, like you've done a marathon. The guy said you've done a bunch of stuff like that. Are you competing again? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, gosh, always on the fringe about going back to another show. Just because this one, if I were to compete again, for sure I would do it as an animal-based competitor, and then by competing, I mean in physique. I would for sure do it either animal-based, carnivore, or I would do it lion, just to strictly say, like, it's the most extreme and the one that people are going to say it's impossible. You need the carbs, your glycogen imbalance, your glucagon, this or that. You won't be able to get the right volumization prior to pumps, stage ready and this and that. I'm just like, God, like that makes me foam with desire because of all the can'ts in that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, as well as I do that it's not just like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. That's such a balls to the wall commitment. And then to do it so tight like that is even more of a commitment. So it's on the board, but I'm right now just kind of looking at it. As far as in endurance events and whatnot, yeah, the marathon in Philly was a ton of fun because that was another one of those can'ts. It was in 2021. I just ran a half marathon in New Orleans on October 31st for Halloween in costume. We love dressing up for any occasion in New Orleans, let alone Halloween. But Halloween's a special day there for us. So I ran a marathon or half marathon, and while I was running it, I was feeling great. And this is as a carnivore. Ran it fasted, no food before, just electrolytes in the morning, and solid pace. I finished just over 90 minutes, and finished the race. And I was like, man, I feel pretty good. I feel like I could do this twice over, essentially the marathon. And throughout that race, I did not drink any water during. I passed the first mile and I was like, I'm good. Pace is good. I feel good. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through. And I was like, man, that wasn't that bad. And then I finished and I'm like, kind of just like, okay, like we're good here. And went home, showered, got cleaned up, changed over, and took my mother to the Saints game. And people were like, dude, you're crazy. You ran like a sub or barely just over 90-minute half marathon, and you're going to the Saints game. Your legs aren't tired. Your body's not. I'm like, dude, I feel good. I feel great. And that was like a big, light bulb to me. I was like, okay, if by how I feel now, if I doubled the distance and the effort, X plus Y, I should feel this way. My body should feel this way, my mind, et cetera, et cetera. I wonder if I could do that as a marathon. Let's see. So I immediately started to search next marathon closest to me, and it was in Philadelphia, November 20th, 2021. I just finished a half on October 31st, so I had 20 days to prepare for it. I've never run a marathon before. To this day, it's still my only marathon I've ever run. I had never run past like 16, 17 miles before the race. So preparing for it, I was like, okay, I have 20 days to put together a crash course plan to try to run what I wanted to do under 3.5 hours, right? So 3:30 or better. And people are like, dude, no freaking way. You haven't done this. Can't. And I was just like, all right, now we got to do it. So I put my simple little plan together. It wasn't great, but it was good enough. And the furthest run that I did during that prep was like 17 miles. And after that, I was like, all right, I feel pretty good. anything after this on race day, we're going to tap into the adrenaline storage and just feel it out, mile at a time, break it down however we need to, half mile at a time, quarter mile at a time. But mile at a time in my head meant I can do it. So get to Philadelphia, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to try to do this the same way I did the last one. Fasted that day, and if I can do it with no water on course too, man, that's really going to freak people out. Don't drink any water in the marathon and run it at that 3:30 or better pace. And I was like, dude, are you getting yourself into trouble? But I felt more confident in my ability than I was worried about the skepticism or the naysayers. And so the night before, I went to a Brazilian steakhouse, like a good churrascaria there, downtown Philly, and just packed it in. Heavy meat, all super fatty, and drank tons of water, electrolytes, that night, electrolytes in the morning, and then come the start of the race, let's go for it. One failure, though, I didn't do a sound check before, and I only had one headphone working, and I did not realize that until literally right before I was about to press start on my watch. So I was like, oh, this is not cool. Started the race, and also the night before, I made my own carnivore-friendly race gels in case I was going to use them, in case I was dying. And I was like, I need something. And I took bone marrow, softened it up, raw, heavy cream that I bought from some Amish vendors at a food market in Philadelphia, and mixed in my electrolytes and essentially made a gel out of that marrow, cream, and electrolytes, put them in Ziploc bags, and I was just going to strap them around my waist, and that would be my gel if needed. So I had them, but I ended up not using them. First half of the marathon, no water, nothing. Same thing. My pace was good. I was actually sub 3. And I was like, man, this is great. Like, if I run sub 3, this is going to be amazing, But then I started to slow down a little bit in the second half. And then after I think it was mile 18, man, I hit a freight train. I was like, oh my God, I would love some water right now. My body would love some hydration and some electrolytes and anything to boost this glucose right now, because I'm fucking dying. But I said, no, you come this far, you're going to make it, you're going to make it. So I kept watching the clock. I gutted through it, and I finished in 3:25 or something like that. But no water, no food, nothing in my mouth except for some bugs flying by. But, same thing. People were like, that's impossible. How did you do that? And I was even in a group with my old real estate firm with a bunch of ultra runners, people that have 10, 20 races under their belts. And I'm like, man, these guys and gals are way cooler and more impressive than me. And during our first meeting, the moderator was like, yeah, Jake, tell them about your marathon. And I was like, these people have run Badwater and the coolest, hardest races you can run, Moab 240. And I'm like, yeah, I've run one marathon. But I tell the story and they all go, oh my God, dude, that's amazing. How did you do that? That's not, and I'm like, is that really that cool to y'all? And to this day, people are fascinated by that. And I'm just like, I don't see how that's that impressive, but apparently it is. So I don't know if I'm going to compete in physique again. I don't know what the next race is yet, but hopefully I'll be back in New York in August for another swim in the Hudson that we do every year, 3.5 miles for the NYC SEAL swim. That's always a blast. So I'm hoping I'll be able to get there for that.
Amazing, man. Definitely inspirational, dude. We got to, if you come up, definitely we got to make sure we meet up, man. Get the train together.
100%.
Yeah, that'll be fun, man. It's very inspirational. We're definitely gonna have to do part 2 of this as well. I just got a coaching call, man. But that's inspiration. Where can people? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or follow you, Jake?
Yeah, man. Life Like Jake, everything. LifeLikeJake.com, YouTube.com, @LifeLikeJake, LifeLikeJake on Instagram, TikTok, everywhere and anywhere. That's where you find me. There's no bots. There's no assistant. That's me responding to everything. So if you have a problem, you're trying to find something or learn something, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome, bro. All right. Give me 1 second.